In other temples, the Mangal Arti is at 4:30 and Japa is after it. So you can imagine if you had Mangal Arti and you do like you do at this Mangal Arti, you're probably not going to fall asleep immediately afterwards, right? It takes a little bit, like, you know, when I first start speaking right now, everybody's awake. Probably by the end of the class, then I'm getting this, right? You start to lose it. But to actually wake up and immediately start chanting japa for 2 hours, that's a challenge. It is a challenge. Today I was tired and I was feeling it. I was like, okay, yeah, I can see it. I could fall asleep if I allowed myself, but there was no way after what I told you guys yesterday I was going to fall asleep. There was no way. So but you do different things. And every once in a while when you're chanting japa, you start to get too comfortable. Right? You're set, you're moving, you're just not moving, you're just comfortable. And of course you're going to want to fall asleep because you're tired. So try to make yourself a little uncomfortable. You know, like I like to just keep moving. It kind of just like keeps me awake, and it's almost like a metronome. You know those things that go tick, 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 back and forth for music students? Well, that kind of just keeps me in a rhythm. I'm like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. It keeps me in a rhythm. So everybody has to find their rhythm and how to stay awake and how to chant nice japa, because it is our foundation and it is very important. So, but I was noticing you were having a hard time from the get-go, they say. Very difficult this morning. Some of you other guys, this guy, screams his mantras when he gets tired, which is really good. And actually, Prabhupada said, as far as not being tired, but he said, whenever your mind starts to come into play a little too much in your japa, chant loud. It slows the mind down because you have to put more energy into chanting than your mind as to stop it, so you can beat your mind like that. And there's a famous story with Jaiba Takaswami. Everyone probably knows this story, but I'll tell it again anyway for those that don't. The Jaiba Taka was in the Montreal temple, and he was still a very young new devotee. And Prabhupada had said in a class that when your mind starts to become too active during japa, to chant louder than your mind. You silence your mind by chanting loudly. So Jaiba Taka would always chant really loud. And it was in a temple room like this size, and nobody was ever allowed to chant outside the temple room. It just was unheard of, because who knows what you're doing? You're probably on a bench somewhere sleeping or something. So everybody had their eyes on everybody else, so everybody chanted in the temple room. So Jaiba Taka would be chanting like, Hare Krishna, kind of like you do. Can you do it for me? No, do it like you're doing it this morning. Yeah, right. Right. Like everybody else is like, Hare Krishna, and all of a sudden you start to doze, and you're, Hare Krishna, and everybody wakes up, which is good. It's like an alarm. You're waking everybody. Hey, come on, we're supposed to be chanting this mantra. So it's really good. But so Jaiba Taka used to chant really loud all the time. Like you only were doing it like every once in a while, but Jaiba Taka all the time. And everybody was like, again, like I told that story about that Mataji, it was like, come on, really? We're all trying to chant here. Why are you doing it so loud? So he was chanting so loud. So the devotees went to Srila Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, you told him to chant loud when his mind's bothering him, but he kind of chants loud all the time. So Prabhupada had a little meeting with him. And he said, so Jaiba Taka, you are chanting so nicely, but the devotees are saying you're chanting very loud all the time. And Jaiba Taka said, yes, Srila Prabhupada, because my mind is bothering me all the time. And you said to chant loud, so I chant loud. So Prabhupada said, this is very nice, but for you, I'm going to suggest that you go into the park that's next to the temple and chant there. And there you can chant as loud as you want. The trees will hear you, the birds, the ants, everyone will hear you. But the other devotees will then be able to chant their rounds and hear their mantras. So Jaiba Taka got a special exemption Nobody was allowed to chant outside the temple except for Jaiba Takaswami. So he was very special, always very special. Okay, so this is it. This is the class. Okay, so you know what I'm going to do. I'm not going to give you anything really philosophical. Although, if you do listen carefully, every story has a point and a meaning. So just listen and hopefully you enjoy. So Srila Prabhupada. See, I love talking about Srila Prabhupada. I got to be honest. I really love talking about Srila Prabhupada because it helps me to understand just how important Srila Prabhupada is in my life. And because he's so important in my life, I'm trying to make him important in your life. That this is a very special time for all of us to be able to be engaged in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. Throughout the world, the movement is spreading everywhere, but especially here in India. It's going really, really well. And the reason being, Prabhupada's mercy spread throughout the Western world. And the devotees from America, Canada, Australia, they started coming to India to preach. So, but that was Prabhupada's plan. Because he knew, just like here, everybody who sees a big white body, whoa, okay, like that's different, right? I kind of don't fit in with everybody else. Where are you from? And that's always the first question everybody asks. Where are you from? You know, and I'd like to say something funny, but I just go, America, you know. I like to say, like, Transylvania. Yeah, figure that one out. Oh, okay. Thank you. But I always say America. But, you know, this movement is just going like wildfire. And it didn't always be like that. In the very beginning, it was a struggle. You can imagine people wearing sheets with shaved heads, singing songs, singing the same thing over and over again. You know, people in the West had no idea what's going on. What are they doing? Why are they doing this? But most people, just like myself, were afraid to find out because it scared everybody. It's like so different. It means that what you believe, if it's true, negates everything that I believe, that I believed was true. And that's one of the biggest eye-openers, that when you actually hear the philosophy of Krishna consciousness and you're receptive to it, it opens your eyes, it opens your heart to, wow, you know, this philosophy, it's science, it really makes sense. It's not just some whimsical ideas, it's the science of God, and it makes total sense. But if you've grown up your whole life and you've been fed some impersonalist idea, there is no God, or God is just light, or God is just love, or God is whatever you want to believe, then that defeats that whole idea. And then you go, and this is what I felt. I felt like I wasted 22 years of my life. I mean, I actually had no clue about God, and now all of a sudden I find out. Why couldn't I have found out about this when I was a little boy? And then I wouldn't have wasted 22 years trying to get happiness where there wasn't any to be found. So I just thought I'd give you that one. So I have some really good stories here. I have a list, and I'm going to stick with my list today. So Srila Prabhupada, in India, they don't quite grasp pure devotee. They understand Swami, they understand Guru, but a pure devotee is not quite understood, because how many pure devotees are around? We really don't know. You know, if I could produce some tidbits of gold in my hand, does that mean I'm a pure devotee? Or just a yogi with some mystic powers? So most of India didn't understand the actual position of Srila Prabhupada. To be honest, most of the world, all of the world, didn't understand the true position of Srila Prabhupada. So one time, Srila Prabhupada was giving a talk, and it was actually an informal talk. So there were businessmen there from Bombay, about 20 of them, well-to-do, all well-dressed. And Srila Prabhupada was giving a small talk. The subject matter, I don't remember, but it was a small talk. And this one man, he had his mind fixed on Srila Prabhupada reading his palm, as if Srila Prabhupada is some sort of, genie or whatever they have, whatever you call it, who just reads palms. With a crystal ball, I see in this crystal ball that you will this, and your lines are saying this, there's your health line. But Prabhupada, that wasn't what Prabhupada was. But this businessman did not know that. So he was insisting. He would say, Swamiji, right in the middle of Prabhupada talking, he would interrupt and say, Swamiji, please read my palm. And Prabhupada just kind of ignored him and kept talking. He's speaking absolute truth, the soul. He's speaking like this. This guy goes again, Swamiji, read my palm, read my palm. And Prabhupada again just ignored him, because that's not what Prabhupada is. He's not a palm reader. But the guy again said it. Says, Swamiji, read my palm. So Prabhupada realized the third time that he wasn't going to stop. So better he just read his palm. So Prabhupada took his hand and looked at it very closely. And he goes, oh, like that. And the guy pulls his hand away. Like, uh-oh, what's he going to say? Prabhupada says, I see birth, death, old age, and disease. And the guy's like, oh, what, really, in there? Then Prabhupada says, but if you clap your hands in kirtan, all the lines go away. So remember that, in kirtan, if you're going like that, all of a sudden, all your bad karma goes away. So Prabhupada gave us that instruction. Have I told you how Prabhupada got the name Prabhupada? No. Good. Okay. So as you may or may not know, in the very beginning, in 1966, 67, and halfway through 68, Srila Prabhupada was called Swamiji. Swamiji. And that was the name everybody called him, Swamiji. Now at that particular time, he had, in 1968, he had a servant and secretary that were husband and wife. I remember mentioning that to you before, because I've told the story. But they were very informal with Srila Prabhupada. So one time, the husband went into Srila Prabhupada and said, Swamiji, I want to call my wife, whose name was Govinda, Govindaji, because it's an affectionate term. Rather than saying Swami, we call you Swamiji. So rather than saying Govinda, I want to say Govindaji. And Srila Prabhupada says, actually, the G at the end is third class. So better you don't call her Govindaji. So Govinda Mataji is here, has heard this and says, whoa. You're saying when we say Swamiji, that is a third class way of calling you. And Prabhupada went, oh, it's all right, it's nothing. He's, no. She says, no. We're not calling you Swamiji if it's third class. We're not going to do that. So Prabhupada says, no, it is okay. It is very nice. It is okay. And again, Govinda, no, Swami, we're not calling you that. She goes, what can we call you? Give us some other names, because we are not going to call you Swamiji anymore. And so the Swamiji, he said, you can call me Gurudev, Vishnupad, or Prabhupad. And Govinda said, Prabhupad, I like that one. Is that okay? Can we call you Prabhupad? And Prabhupada said, if you want, you may call me Prabhupada. Now, in America in 1966, Swamiji was easy to say. Everyone can say Swamiji. But Prabhupada, that was kind of a tongue twister. You've heard that one? Prabhupada. How do we say that again? Prabhupada. And nobody understood what Prabhupada meant, so it was just some weird name. Prabhupada. What's a Prabhupada? We don't know what that is. So Prabhupada explained what Prabhupada meant. Is that the master, that all other masters sit at his feet. So that's a very appropriate term. Now, when Prabhupada got that name, his godbrothers were furious. They were so angry with him, to the point of some of them were saying some very blasphemous things to Prabhupada, which really angered his disciples. But here in India, Prabhupada's godbrothers objected because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was known as Prabhupada. So they were thinking, you upstart, you think you're as good as Bhaktisiddhanta? And Prabhupada said, I have no choice. This is what they want to call me. So Prabhupada stuck to his guns because it pleased his disciples. So Prabhupada was like, you can be mad at me, that's okay. But my disciples, they like calling me that, so that is the name. So he ran into a little opposition with the name Prabhupada. But eventually, once everybody from Gaudiya Math saw how many Westerners were taking to Krishna consciousness because of Srila Prabhupada, then they eased up a little bit. And slowly they warmed up to the idea that not only Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada could have that name, but A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada could have that name as well. One time a devotee received a sweater. He was living in New Vrindavan, which is a country area, and it's very cold. And it's very austere. It's not so bad now, the cold's there, but at least now they have heaters and things like that. But in the very beginning of New Vrindavan starting, it was very austere. This one devotee, it was actually from England, and his mother, knowing of the austerity, sent him this beautiful cashmere sweater. It is very warm, it's very beautiful, and it's very expensive. So she sent him this sweater for him to wear to keep warm from the cold. But he wanted to give it to Srila Prabhupada because it was a beautiful sweater. And he worked in the field, so probably not the best sweater to wear out while you're working in the garden. So he wanted to give it to Srila Prabhupada. He was not like a GBC or temple president or anything like that, but he made his way into one of Prabhupada's darshans because he told the leaders there that he had a gift for Srila Prabhupada. So they honored his wishes of letting him be in a darshan. So he approached Srila Prabhupada and he said, right in the middle of a talk, because he couldn't wait any longer. He was afraid that everybody would just get up and leave and then it wouldn't happen. So he approached Srila Prabhupada in the middle of a darshan. And he said, Srila Prabhupada, I have a gift for you. I want to give this to you. Srila Prabhupada opened it up, saw this beautiful sweater. And he says, no, you cannot give me this. This is too nice. And the devotees were explaining this was a gift from his mother. So he was like, no, you take this. This is for you. And the devotees started to cry. Now, this is a guy who works with bulls and oxes, is big and strong, as tough as nails was the expression, and he starts crying. He starts not just crying, but he's weeping like a baby. And Prabhupada's looking at him, and so he feels compassion. So he says, okay, I will take the sweater. And Prabhupada takes off his sweater and gives it to the devotee. So Prabhupada had compassion, he had understanding. Because he didn't really want this beautiful sweater, he wanted the devotee to have it. But the solution, he took off his sweater, which was 1,000 million times better than the sweater that his mother sent, because Prabhupada had worn it. So he got some Mahaprasadam from Srila Prabhupada. Devotees used to always like, I said this the other day, when they'd walk in darshan, in japa walks with Prabhupada, morning walks, they would always concentrate on Prabhupada's feet, if they'd never been out before. One time in England, they were on, let's see, these names don't mean anything to you guys. They were on John Lennon's estate, who was like one of the most famous people in the world. He was a Beatle, anyway. Long time ago, 60 years ago. So you don't know who it is. But to me, it's like, whoa. But to you, it's like, who, whatever. So anyway, they were on this one of the most famous people in the world. The devotees got to stay at this guy's farm. It was like a country estate farm. The grass was rather high, and in England, as you know, it rains an awful lot. So it was kind of mushy, muddy, with tall grass. Mataji Jamuna, who is famous, why is she famous? Who knows why Jamuna is famous? What does she sing that we sing if we're in a regular temple every day? Govindam Adi Pusham. Okay, so that's Jamuna. Prabhupada loved her because she loved Prabhupada so much. So she was walking behind Srila Prabhupada, watching his lotus feet. He was wearing boots, actually. But boots don't matter. The lotus feet are still there. That's what you were going like, okay. Next time if it's going to fall on me, let me know. So she was checking out Prabhupada walking in this muddy, grassy field with his, what they call Wellington boots, big rubber boots. And she noticed there was no footprints. Prabhupada's walking in mud and not leaving footprints. And she looked back. She's leaving footprints, but Prabhupada's not leaving any footprints. And it was just blowing her mind. How is he walking in mud? I'm walking in mud. I'm leaving footprints, but Prabhupada's not leaving footprints. So she said, Srila Prabhupada, I happen to be noticing that as you're walking, you're not leaving any footprints. And Prabhupada says, one day you will understand. And it bewildered her for her entire life. She was always, how is it possible? How is it possible? And other devotees, one time in the Detroit airport, they were greeting Srila Prabhupada. He was coming up an escalator. Do you know what an escalator is? Those, right. He comes to the top. They all pay their obeisances. And they're looking. They're on the ground looking. And devotees go, Prabhupada is not touching the ground. Now the one devotee who told me this story is Indrajuma Swami. You all heard of him? Right, he's a very special devotee. He saw Srila Prabhupada's feet walking, but not on the ground. And he was like, okay. And he was afraid to say anything because, you know, hey, I saw Prabhupada's feet, they weren't on the ground. Yeah, sure, you know. But he kept that for years, never saying anything. Then he met up another devotee who was paying his obeisances right next to him at the same time in the Detroit airport. And he says, you know what? I'm just going to throw this out there, but you know when Prabhupada came in 72 and we all paid our obeisances when in the airport and he came up the escalator, I noticed, okay, don't think I'm crazy, but I noticed that Prabhupada's feet, it sure looked to me, they weren't touching the ground as he was walking. And the devotee goes, really? You saw that too? And that's like, whoa. It's confirmed. We both saw the same thing. It wasn't just some optical illusion. Prabhupada's feet were not touching the ground. And also, when Prabhupada used to go on his morning walks, 6'2", 6'5" devotees walking with Srila Prabhupada could not keep up with him. How is this possible? Prabhupada was 5'4". He was really shorter than everybody else. I know when I walk with my wife, who's 5'6", she has to go, slow down, because I'm striding way out there, and she's like, so Prabhupada didn't go, Prabhupada somehow or other was walking faster than all his disciples. Some devotees said, who were kind of shorter, I almost had to jog to keep up with Srila Prabhupada. How's that possible? Oh, this is. I have so many good ones here. I mean, which one do I save for the last, right? But anyway, this one. In a Bhagavatam class in Bombay, the subject matter of devotees leaving their body came up. And Srila Prabhupada said in a class, which is recorded, I will personally come and take your hand when you are leaving your body and introduce you to Krishna. Tell me I don't meditate on that one. As far as that goes, there was a devotee in France. He actually was one of the leading devotees in France. Became a sannyasi. He was a GBC for a while. He was an amazing preacher, made so many devotees in France. Something happened, and he ended up leaving the movement. He not only left the movement, he became a devil worshiper. Devil worshiper. Satan worshiper. Unheard of, right? I mean, it's one thing to not want to follow the 4 regular principles, not chant 16 rounds, but to reverse your whole idea of a supreme person from God to the devil. So he became actually in France one of the leading devil worshippers. There are pictures of him on the internet with all the demoniac signs, and he's dressed with this horrible outfits. Heavy, super heavy. Devotees couldn't speak to him. He was so blasphemous and so obnoxious and nasty as far as Krishna consciousness. He was a full-on devil worshiper. He was dying, this is a few years ago, in a hospital. And right before he was about to leave his body, he was in kind of a coma. He was kind of out of it. There were no devotees there. There was no devil worshippers there. It was just him. The nurses and doctors that were attending to him said he came to consciousness right before he left his body. And he said, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, you have come." And then he left his body. So, I mean, I have a really good feeling none of you are going to become devil worshippers. I'm pretty positive of that. So if we just stay the course, there's no doubt in my mind that Srila Prabhupada will come to take us back to Godhead. Okay? Okay. One time in Delhi, Prabhupada had just arrived from Vrindavan and he came to Delhi and he went to greet the deities. And the day before, the pujari there was noticing that they had a fan directed at the deities, but it seemed to be blowing Krishna's hair. And she felt that, I'll just turn this fan off because it might make the hair not look good. So I'll turn the fan off. And it was very hot in Delhi, so they had a fan. But she redirected the fan so it would just kind of blow in front of Radha and Krishna. Prabhupada was greeting the deities that day, and she was in the little group of devotees behind Prabhupada. And he stopped and he turned and he said, "Krishna looks really hot." And she was like, "How does he know that I just took the fan off of him?" She says, "Krishna looks hot." We must always remember that the deity is a person. It's a personal thing. So we want the deities to be cool because they're there. They're people. Krishna's there. Radha's there. But Prabhupada, somehow or other, knew that she had taken the fan off and that Krishna was looking hot. And so told her, "Put a fan on Krishna." And he didn't know that she had just taken the fan off of Krishna. He said, "Put a fan on Krishna." So, Prabhupada knows things. We don't really know who Prabhupada is. That's kind of the fun part about learning more about Srila Prabhupada and this Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was once asked, "Do you know everything about everybody?" And he responded with, "I know what Krishna wants me to know." So he would see things before they would happen, and people would want to go in and complain about something, and Prabhupada would start talking about it before they could even open their mouth. It was like, oh, how did he know that? So that was Srila Prabhupada. Okay. This one was told to me by Shruti Kirti. Does everybody know who Shruti Kirti is? He was Prabhupada's servant very early on. Srila Prabhupada had Shruti Kirti as his servant for a while. And then Shruti Kirti decided that he wanted to get married. So he left that service. And he actually went to Venezuela as a devotee. So he spent 6 months to a year, I believe it was, in Venezuela, practicing Krishna consciousness in the temple there in Caracas, Venezuela. Now, he rejoined as Srila Prabhupada's servant. And one of the first places they went to Mexico. And after Mexico, they went to Venezuela. So when they got to Venezuela, they got off the airplane, went to the temple, and they were having kirtan, Prabhupada sitting on the Vyasasana. And Shruti Kirti, because he knew everybody who was there, was not paying attention to Srila Prabhupada. He was looking at everybody, he's doing all that kind of stuff, remembering, doing it, he's doing like this and doing like that, and like saying hi to all the devotees in Venezuela while standing next to Prabhupada, but not being Prabhupada's servant, being more like, I used to be in Venezuela. Hey, how you doing? Hey, how's it going? Like that. Then all of a sudden, a ball of socks hit Shruti Kirti in the side of the head. A ball of socks. Srila Prabhupada took off his socks himself, put it into a ball and threw it and hit Shruti Kirti in the side of the head. Like, hello, you're my servant. You're supposed to be doing this, not saying hello to everybody. So Shruti Kirti's like, oh. And he felt really bad, of course. He'd forgotten about Prabhupada. His service was Prabhupada. One time in Los Angeles, Shruti Kirti had a room next to Srila Prabhupada's. And his job as a servant was to simply be in this room. If Prabhupada rang the bell, he would go in. And that's his service. He's a servant. And he'd be like 3 days in, and Shruti Kirti's just sitting there. And he's like, I could go to the morning program. Instead, I'm just sitting here with Prabhupada. I know so many people downstairs in the LA temple. I want to go down. Prabhupada won't miss me. I've just been sitting here. He doesn't ring his bell in the morning. So he goes to Mangal Artik. And he's like ecstatic. He's dancing with all his God brothers. And this is like so cool. I'm back to just being a regular devotee. I'm not the servant. I'm just dancing. And all of a sudden, somebody tugs on his kurta. Prabhupada wants to see you. So he goes running up. And he goes into Prabhupada's room. Prabhupada says, where were you? And he goes, well, you weren't ringing the bell, Prabhupada, so I thought I'd go to Mangal Artik. And Prabhupada says, you do not go to Mangal Artik. You are my servant. You wait there. If I ring the bell, you're there. So Shruti Kirti said, I'm probably the only person in all of Iskcon who was told not to go to Mangal Artik. So he didn't go. Now, when Prabhupada used to travel around, he had a secretary/servant named Harikesh Swami. And Harikesh Swami was probably one of the top intelligent devotees that we had in the movement. Really intelligent. And he also would be one of Srila Prabhupada's favorite devotees to have demon devotee arguments. Prabhupada would say, okay, today you be the demon, I'll be the devotee, and they would argue philosophy. And then the next day he would say, okay, now you be the devotee, I'll be the demon, you try to defeat me. And then, so Harikesh was very good at it, but of course Prabhupada as the devotee would win, and as the demon he would win. He just couldn't beat him. Harikesh Swami could never talk Srila Prabhupada. So one time, Harikesh came into Prabhupada, and it was his responsibility to make chapatis. He would make Prabhupada's chapatis. And Prabhupada always liked his chapatis puffed and steaming. So they would bring it fresh. You go back and make another and bring it back. Never like a stack. It was always one chapati. And then he'd run back, make another, bring it back. So they were using this tiny little burner. They were in a temple where they didn't have a big kitchen. And he couldn't make it puff up. He just couldn't do it. He'd bring the thing, brothers, get this out of here. Get me good chapati. And Harikesh finally said, Prabhupada, I can't do it. I don't have the facility. The dough is not good. The burner doesn't work. It can't be done. Ooh. That was like, oh, really? So Prabhupada gets up, goes in the kitchen, gets his dough together, puts it on the burner. It doesn't puff up. Harikesh is like, told ya. Prabhupada did it again. Puffed right up. While still on the tongs, Prabhupada's holding the chapati, flipped it in his face and walked out. Okay. One of excuse me, go. One of my favorite stories. Now we're getting to my favorite ones. One of my favorite ones. Oh, I'll tell this one first. They were greeting the deities again in Delhi. I think it was Delhi. Maybe it was Bombay. And as they were taking darshan of the deities, Srila Prabhupada was looking at the deities, and there was a few sannyasis right close nearby him. And one of the sannyasis leaned forward to Prabhupada and said, Srila Prabhupada, Krishna's flute is backwards. And Prabhupada turned and says, it doesn't matter. Krishna can play from both ends. Okay. So, here we are. We're in San Francisco. Now, it's very early on in the movement. And Srila Prabhupada said, any publicity is good publicity. So there was a talk show, and this guy's name was Joe Pine. And he was famous throughout all of southern USA for having guests on and making fun of them, getting them agitated, just, turning it into a fight. That was his whole program was about. He would agitate the person who was being interviewed so much that they'd start arguing. And of course, everybody likes a good fight, so people would all tune into his show to see who was he going to beat today, who was he going to make fun of. So Prabhupada got an invitation to go to this show. The devotees are like, Prabhupada, they explained, this guy he's ruthless, he's brutal. He'll say things that are probably blasphemous. We don't want to go. Prabhupada says, no, we will go. Any publicity is good publicity. We'll just say Krishna. Then people in Southern California will hear Krishna. We will say Krishna. So he gets on the show. And sure enough, the first thing the guy says is, Swami, you're from India. You think you know about God? We know about God here in America. We have our own beliefs. We don't need you coming here telling us about God. And by the way, in India, you have a really high death rate. And Prabhupada says, as far as I know, the death rate is the same everywhere, 100%. So the guy was taken back a bit. Like, okay, that was a good answer. He got me on that one. So he took another shot. Now, he had read somewhere that the Vedas say that the solar system is like a flat panel, is what we say. But he interpreted it as, you say the earth is flat. So he said that to Prabhupada. Your philosophy is that the earth is flat. How do you explain that? Srila Prabhupada says, well, wherever I walk, it is. So that was like a little too much for this guy. He got defeated twice. He never gets defeated. So his assistant, a woman, says, okay, she'll take a shot at him. So she says, Swami, why do you shave your head? Srila Prabhupada says, why do you shave your legs? And then Srila Prabhupada says, better to have a cool head and warm legs. Okay. That's not the end, though. Then the guy comes back, Joe Pine. He comes back. He's got a little more ammunition ready. He's going to take his last shot at Srila Prabhupada. He says, Swami, you got a few Hare Krishnas here, followers of you. What if the whole world became Hare Krishnas? And Prabhupada says, you don't need to worry about that. There will always be fools like you. Now the guy just completely shuts up. Prabhupada preaches straight without any interruptions for 10 minutes. And all the devotees go home and they're just cheering the whole way back. Jai Prabhupada! Jai Prabhupada! He just totally annihilated this guy. Okay. All right. We all know the puffed rice story. Shruti Kirti's puffed rice story. You do, I'm sure. So they're on an airplane. And Prabhupada's sitting in his seat. Next to him is Shruti Kirti. And next to him is, I can't think of his name right now, but a sannyasi who was traveling with Prabhupada. And so Prabhupada would never eat the airplane food, obviously. Like, you just don't eat that stuff. It's just too gross. So they would always bring something for prasadam, for Prabhupada. Now this particular flight, right before they left, Mataji handed them an aluminum foil with puffed rice in it. And that was it. Nothing else, just some puffed rice. So Shruti Kirti, when asked, Prabhupada said, what do we have for prasadam? He opened up the aluminum foil, put it in front of Srila Prabhupada, puffed rice. So Prabhupada ate some puffed rice, and he passed it over to Shruti Kirti. He says, now, you share and you eat. You two eat. So Shruti Kirti split the aluminum foil, puffed rice for the sannyasi, puffed rice for him. At that moment, the stewardess, the flight attendant, comes by and just reaches over and starts eating Shruti Kirti's puffed rice. Doesn't say anything, just starts reaching into his puffed rice and starts eating it. And she goes, wow, this stuff's really good. What is it? Shruti Kirti's like, yo, lady, like, what are you doing? And he goes, and she takes another handful. This is great stuff. What do you call this stuff? And Shruti goes, well, it's just puffed rice. She goes, man, I've never tasted anything like this. She goes, this is fantastic. She said, who's this gentleman? And Shruti Kirti said, this is our spiritual master. He's a sannyasi, guru. He's from India. And we just brought this special puffed rice because we don't eat the airline food. So she says, well, maybe I can get you some hot milk. Would you like hot milk? And Prabhupada says, nods his head, yes. So he says, 3 hot milks. She says, how about some fruit? Would you like some fruit? They have fruit up in first class. I'll go get some for you. Was that okay? And Prabhupada shakes his head again, yes. So she comes back with the hot milk, the fruit, and Shruti Kirti is so confused. She says to Prabhupada, did you see that, Srila Prabhupada? She just reached and took my puffed rice. And he says, yes, women, they are very simple. They just do things like that. So it's okay. So Shruti Kirti was in Los Angeles, and he told this story. Now, after the story, somebody from the audience who was Spanish came up and said, can I tell you a story? And Shruti Kirti goes, yeah, sure, go ahead, tell me a story. He says, well, I'm from Brazil, and we were doing traveling Sankirtan, and we would go out of the cities to where nobody could travel except in like a Jeep. You know what a Jeep is? Like a 4-wheel drive vehicle that you can get through anything. And I went to this village in the middle of nowhere in Brazil, almost in the Amazon section, which is so desolate, so far away from everything. I knocked on this door to do book distribution. The woman opens the door, and behind her, I could see on the wall, there was a picture of Radha Krishna. And I looked further, and there's a picture of Prabhupada. And there was Panchatattva. And I'm standing there going, whoa, this is like almost like a hut in the middle of nowhere. And he says to the woman, are you Hare Krishna? And she goes, well, no, not really. But come on in, and we can talk. So he goes in, and he says, how did you ever find out about Krishna consciousness? And she said, well, about 15 years ago, I used to be a flight attendant. Do you get it? Simply the puff rice. And then she started inquiring. And then she goes, wherever I would go into an airport, I'd get one of your books. I really like reading them. I'm not like a full-on Hare Krishna. I do chant a bit, but I love the philosophy. And I really like Swami Prabhupad. Okay. The potency of puff rice. And not just puff rice, but Prabhupada's Maha puff rice. Okay. This is the last story. It's coming up on 9 o'clock anyway. The last story. Now this is a little bit of an audience participation. All right? Not yet though. I'll tell you when your time to participate comes. So, in the early parts of Iskcon, Kirtan and dancing in Kirtan. Dancing in Kirtan, there was one way that Prabhupada showed us, because when people first started coming to Kirtan in New York City, in San Francisco, the dancing in Kirtan was hippie type dancing. Sort of like the way Kumar dances. That's a joke. But you know, just free expression. Whatever happens, whatever you do, you know, like that. And Prabhupada said, the way to dance in Kirtan is like Lord Chaitanya. Everyone see Lord Chaitanya? He showed picture. So the arms are like this. And then he showed the Swami step. So everyone please stand up. Now, we know that name, Swami step, correct? You know the Swami step. It's right foot, left foot, arms in the air. Can we all do that? Arms in the air, right foot in front, then left foot in front. So that was Kirtan. It didn't matter if the Kirtan was like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. It was still right foot, left foot, hands in the air. You sped it up a bit, but it was still the same dance. That's all anybody did in Kirtan. Okay, you can sit down now. I'm just playing with you guys. Gonna have some more fun later. So that was Kirtan dancing. Swami step. End of story. So one time in Los Angeles, it was a Sunday feast, but not a normal Sunday feast. You guys know Sunday feast? Kind of like what you have here almost, where we invite people from anywhere they want to come from to come to the temple. We serve nice feast. There's nice kirtan, small lecture. The Sunday feast, very popular, especially in the West. So this particular Sunday feast, there was a fire sacrifice going to be held. So special, a little bit special. And it just so happened that a TV crew from Italy was going to film the whole experience. And it also just so happened that prior to the Sunday feast, the devotees went to this famous park and had a puppet show and invited people back. So there was a full temple room. It was like a grand opening of something. So many people, cameras, the whole thing going on. Also there was a Mataji who was a guru. And she had some of her well-dressed, educated, wealthy Indian disciples there. So the place was absolutely packed with all kinds of people. So Srila Prabhupada performed the fire sacrifice. It was up on the stage. When the fire sacrifice finished, Srila Prabhupada had kirtan. And the way it was back then is the men were on one side, the women were on the other side. It wasn't like this, it was like that. Does that make sense? Like here it's like this, men front, women back. Like yes, last night we had women side, men this side. So that's how kirtan was. And everyone just sort of formed lines and did the Swami step. So Prabhupada was chanting, everyone's doing the Swami step. Okay, now you have to get back up again. Up. I have to stand up. Okay. I'm good. I can just hold this like this. Oh, that works. Okay. So the kirtan's going on. And can someone just chant very quietly? Chant. Okay. We're all doing the Swami step. Hands in the air. You have to participate with this. All right? Okay, so here's how it's going. Prabhupada's chanting. Everyone's doing the Swami step. And then Prabhupada stops chanting and asks one of the devotees, keep your hands in the air. This is penance torture. Hands up. Yeah. So everyone's doing the Swami step. Prabhupada stops chanting. And he asks one of his disciples to chant. So this devotee starts chanting. And now Prabhupada starts doing the Swami step. He's with the men and he's doing the Swami step. And then the kirtan starts to pick up. And it's really getting going. And they look over and Srila Prabhupada starts jumping up and down. Like nobody has ever seen anybody jump up and down in kirtan. So the devotees are like, whoa, Prabhupada's jumping up and down. And they get so excited, they start jumping up and down too. So everyone's jumping up and down, right? They're all jumping like, this is a whole new kirtan. No Swami step. Jump up and down. Jump up and down. So one of the devotees, he runs to the phone. Keep jumping. This is exercise. One of the devotees runs to the phone. This is in Los Angeles. He calls New York. Brahmananda answers the phone. And he goes, Brahmananda, guess what? We're allowed to jump up and down. And Brahmananda, keep jumping. Brahmananda goes, what do you mean, jump up and down? No, in Kirtan, Prabhupada, he's jumping up and down. We're allowed to jump up and down. And Brahmana's like, whoa, that's incredible. Keep jumping. Prabhupada, that's just so incredible. He gets off the phone. He calls Boston. Satsarup, guess what? Prabhupada's jumping up and down. He goes, what do you mean he's jumping up and down? In Kirtan, we're allowed to jump up and down. Okay. So that's how it all started. And now you can see that we don't just jump up and down. We do all kinds of activity, right? But here's my last bit of advice. When you are dancing like you guys like to dance, remember one thing. Don't stop chanting. You guys all forget about the mantra because you're just so involved in what dance we're going to do and how we're going to do that. That's great. But my only small criticism would be don't forget to chant Hare Krishna while you're dancing. Because if you're just dancing, that's nothing. If you're chanting and dancing, then it's impactful. Then Krishna's noticing. But if you're not calling out to Krishna while you're doing this, he's just like, you could be just in a nightclub or something. So you want to make sure you always remember to chant. Always chant and dance, okay? So the next time I come down to Haldia, if I ever do, I want to see everyone chanting and dancing. Or better yet, maybe I'll just check out one of your videos because you guys post videos. And I'm going to be watching. I can see you guys are having ecstatic motions, but you got to keep chanting. Then the ecstatic motions will get even more ecstatic. Okay? So please remember that. And thank you so much for allowing me to tell you some Prabhupada stories. I have to admit I'm very self-motivated because I like hearing these stories. I like hearing Prabhupada's pastimes. And was it you who said you read in Bhagavatam that the pastimes of the pure devotee are just as relishable, right? Didn't you say that? And that's the truth. The pastimes of the pure devotees are, for me, more relishable because I can relate more. Prabhupada was here. I could see him. I saw him. So I know what a pure devotee is all about. And that by following this process, we too can become pure devotees. That's what Prabhupada wants. So if we're actually grateful for this opportunity to be in this International Society for Krishna Consciousness, to be in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement, we follow Srila Prabhupada's instructions, Mahaprabhu's instructions to chant and dance. So we never see Mahaprabhu not dancing, and we always chants. Kirtan parties were ecstatic because they were chanting and dancing. So let's remember that and keep it together. And I thank you so much for allowing me to be here. And this concludes today's talk. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Huh? Sure.
So if devotees have any question, 1 or 2 questions, last questions, after that we will leave. किसी का कुछ प्रश्न है? Yes, Aryan.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
My question is that as Iskcon is called as International Society of Krishna Consciousness,
Yes.
not International Society of Krishna's Love. Basically, I want to say that if we want someone to be Krishna consciousness for whole day and whole night, there must be there must be love for Krishna in his heart.
Yeah.
Then only it is possible. For example, when gopis used to meet Krishna, they don't meet Krishna with aarti thalis. They have just love in their heart. When Sudama went to Krishna, he just went with love in his heart and a potli of rice. And we all know what Krishna did. He washed his legs himself. He made him sit on his throne.
Yeah.
And etc. So basically, Krishna just want love from us, and whatever we offer him with love.
Right.
So basically, this is what I observed that in Iskcon's movement, the word love for Krishna or Krishna Prem is very underrated. We talk about chanting, kirtana, seva, etc. That is good. I'm not against that. That is integral part of Krishna's love. But the word that actually can be preached, more can be highlighted is Krishna Prem, that is love for Krishna.
Right.
So maybe I am wrong, but I have observed that this word is very underrated.
Okay. Interesting. I haven't noticed the word underrated, but Krishna does say that you cannot approach him directly, right? So the way to approach Krishna is to approach his servant. So we actually cannot approach Krishna directly. So therefore, in my way of spreading Krishna consciousness, I am trying to spread Prabhupada consciousness, because Prabhupada can take me to Krishna. He's already said he would. He said, at the time of your death, I will personally come introduce you to Krishna. So I don't believe for myself that I am that advanced that I will simply just, at this stage of my Krishna consciousness, exhibit any symptoms of Krishna Prem. But I can work on Prabhupada Prem. I can love my spiritual master who loves Krishna. So therefore I'm real close, because I'm one away. If I'm falling in love with my spiritual master and wanting to serve him with all my heart and following his instructions are to chant Hare Krishna. And that's why he called this movement the International Movement for Krishna Consciousness, because Krishna is what it's all about. But to actually develop our love for Krishna in our very beginning stages of our process, it's not possible. It's not like all of a sudden I'm going to chant Hare Krishna for one day and then I've got Krishna Prem. I'm right there. Thank you. It's not going to happen like that. So then we work on developing our love for Krishna's devotees who are right here, and we can serve. Real love means service. So we serve each other. We serve the community and trying to bring Krishna consciousness to everybody as possible as we can. And that's real love. And that's what Krishna's happy about. He says, no one is more dear to him than those that are trying to preach to others. So if we want Krishna to love us, then preach to others. Become a preacher, right? So.
One last question.
Okay.
Krishna says that he is responsible for everything.
Yeah.
Then for all our sufferings and sadness, he is responsible. Then why should we love Krishna?
Responsible is a different word than what is. You're responsible for your suffering. You've created it by your own actions and deeds through this life, the last life, the life before. Krishna's just reciprocating with you, saying, okay, you want to try to enjoy without me? These are some of the obstacles that come in play. You're going to suffer. There's no way around it, okay? But that's not Krishna just willy-nilly, oh, that's probably a bad word. That's not Krishna just saying, you know what, I want him to get his arm broken. Ha ha ha. It's not quite like that. Krishna's just reciprocating with us. The more we forget Krishna, the more things like that happen. But things like bad things also happen to good people, right? Prabhupada was gored by a bull right after he took sannyas. He thought he was going to leave his body. You know that story? Prabhupada was gored by a bull. Right after his sannyas ceremony, he's walking down the street and a bull gored him, flipped him up in the air. He thought that was it. He thought he was going to leave. How does that make sense? Because everything that happens is there to help us remember Krishna. The good and the bad. The criticism and the compliments. Everything is meant to just bring us closer to Krishna. So it's not like Krishna's like sitting up there or, you know, in Krishna Loka saying, I want to get this guy. Never did like him. It's not quite like that. Krishna loves everybody. But through our actions, we accumulate good and bad karma. And that is going to happen. Those reactions are going to happen. They only, bad ones become minimized when we take to Krishna consciousness. So sometimes you might stub your toe. If you hadn't been a devotee, maybe you would have lost your foot or something like that, okay? So the minute the actions, the bad karma actions become minimized. That doesn't mean that, you know, you won't ever die in a car accident or something because you're a devotee. Krishna may say, now is your time to come and go do some service somewhere else. So we just don't know Krishna's plan. That's why we say, you know, man proposes, God disposes, right? So we don't know what Krishna's plan is. But we can understand what the spiritual master's goal and plan for us is. That's clear. That's very clear. So following the 4 regulated principles and chanting 16 rounds. Basic, bare, that's it. If you do nothing else, you're on a good one. That's a good one. Nothing else. If you just do that, you follow those 4 regulated principles and chant 16 rounds. So it can't get any simpler, really. It's pretty simple. But even still, what if I went outside into downtown Haldia, if there is such a place, and I said to everybody, you'll never take birth again, you'll never have disease, you'll never get old again, ever, if you simply follow these 4 rules and you chant 16 rounds the Hare Krishna mantra. What do you think? People are like, nah. So I mean, you can't make it any easier for people, but still people are like, nah, it's okay. Nah, I'm all right. Just leave me, I'm fine. That's how the illusory energy is convincing everybody that the material world's okay. It's not okay. Who here is like, oh gee, I can't wait to die. I'm really looking forward to that. I hope I'm so sick and I'm just, totally out of it. I can't wait. That's going to be fantastic. It's not going to be fantastic. Death is something we all should fear. So, getting out of here, simple plan, 4 regulated principles, chant Hare Krishna, and anything on top of that you do, if you become a preacher. And everyone should be a preacher. I said this the other day. Everyone should be a preacher because you know more than so many other people out there about Krishna. So why don't keep it to yourself? Pass it on. All of you should be preaching in some way, in some time, in somewhere. You should preach. We should all preach. Okay, thanks, Prabhu. That was a good question again. Don't overcomplicate things because you're intelligent. You are intelligent, I get that. But don't overcomplicate this process. Keep it simple. The simpler it is, the easier it'll be for you to just continue on with it. If you start raising, well, what, like some of the questions last night about, is it offensive if I do this or do that? It's like, come on, just chant Hare Krishna. You don't need to overcomplicate it. the rules and regulations are not that important as much as just the developing the bhakti by chanting Hare Krishna.
So we see that how a devotee knows the essence of the scripture. So many times people are confused about so many rules and regulations, but essence is to please Krishna. As Prabhuji was yesterday saying, somebody was asking that, if I offer Aarti, if the sequence goes wrong, or if I forgot Tulsi or this, that. But Krishna is saying, Patram Puspam Phalam Tam Yome Bhaktiya. Prachitra Prabhu was telling how Bhakti is very important. So, the type of favor which we are getting, so rare that we have only few Prabhupada disciples left, not even in hundreds, maybe less than that.
Yeah.
So, and to get their association who have live experience, that energy, and Prabhupada was telling how Prabhupada was something transcendental. He would walk without leaving footprints on the air. He could completely annihilate people. Like, so Prabhupada is very special, and we are so fortunate to get Prabhu's association. So how do we repay him? We are like his grandchildren. We only take and take. So we don't know how to repay, but we are just from core of our heart, we can just thank and
Pleasure. My pleasure. I was very happy to be here.
So we can just bless all of us that we can try to push forward the will of Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, trying to bring people, as much people possible, closer to Krishna. So we had a small gift for you. This was a small painting.
Wow. This is a painting?
Yeah.
Somebody who painted it?
One of our students.
Who?
One of
You painted it?
his sister.
His sister. Oh, really?
She's also a devotee.
Wow, that's really good. Wow. She's talented, huh? That's really good. I thought this was a poster. This
Something
is a
like that,
painting.
it seems, but she's very good.
Very nice. Thank you. Do you all see that?
Haribo. It's a very special photo of Krishna carrying the slippers of Nand Maharaj.
Yeah, that's really nice. Okay, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
His Grace Jivanath Prabhu ki,
Jai!
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai!
So now we'll have Prashadam
Jai!
and then Prabhu will leave. Hare Krishna.